Wrestling with wrestling's past and present.
How old were you?
I was -3.
See, JR is trying to contain Jim Ross.
McFlurry,
It's Mick Foley. Definitely not his, the barn burner that Leif Cassidy and Ty Riley Singh was, but, we'll leave that there.
We digress.
God, I hope that storyline ends soon.
And 6 to 8 weeks later, they mail you a freaking magnet.
Yep. You may know him as the Red Rooster.
Hager kept making out with his wife. It was weird. So then, I'm waiting for them to put the Zelina Vega on a pole match for that to be.
It is in the mail, my good sir. Oh, it wasn't Paul.
Giving us a reason to come here and listen to ourselves talk.
Absolutely,
and then you can listen to us too. We're off to a rough start.
This is Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present. I'm Tim Kurt.
I'm Roland Fulis.
And I'm Mongo.
And it has taken us 73 episodes, but we are finally getting to TNA for the very first time today. We're covering the first ever Lockdown pay-per-view from 2005.
And to be fair, a lot of people have this stigma on TNA. And like we discussed last week on last week's episode, TNA from like 04 to 2011-ish was actually pretty good wrestling. So there's some good pay-per-views, some big names. I mean, it gets, bigger as we get, Kurt Angle shows up eventually, stuff like that. So I think that we've kind of done a little bit of a disservice by not having covered it till now, but better late than never, I guess.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it was a niche product. Most fans were just WWE fans, and when WCW went out of business and when Vince bought his competition, people forgot that other wrestling companies existed, like Ring of Honor or New Japan or even Old Japan, whatever they used to call themselves, or Japan Pro. And a lot of the indie wrestlers who maybe didn't have the WWE look went to TNA because Dixie Carter, for all the shit she gets, was a wrestling fan. That also was her downfall, but her and Jeff Jarrett did build something good. And even the talent on this roster that we're going to see, there's a lot of familiar faces that we either still see today that we saw in all the companies, or that would even just go on to be successful in Impact. So TNA doesn't deserve the hate they get. Unfortunately, they had a lot of stupid booking decisions, bringing in Bischoff later on, stuff like that. But the product they put out wasn't a bad product. It's just they tried to beat Goliath with a pea shooter. So, and that's just not what you can do.
You might be able to blind him, but you're not going to kill him.
Right.
Well, I think you got to remember, too, is in the beginning of the TNA, you had Vince Russo as in the booking.
Bro.
And yeah,
bro.
We all know how that goes. So,
bro.
But yeah, they do have some, decent matches. And like you said, there's a lot of names on this card that you'll know. Some Hall of Famers on the card. And then some TNA originals that you probably have heard of as well.
Yeah, and like I said, go ahead.
I was gonna say, can you see how cool the cage looks? The 6-sided cage just looks epic. Like that. That's one thing I don't think I get credit for is how much of a bitch did that cage put up? Because that thing is just it looks like the UFC Octagon without a roof. It just, I don't even know. It's so cool looking.
Well, and that was one of the things I think that kind of ruined TNA when they brought Hogan and Bischoff in. They went away from that 6-sided ring, and I know in different interviews people have said they weren't very forgiving. The rings were kind of stiff. But still, it set them apart. It gave people like if you're flipping the channels and you're used to watching boxing or wrestling and you get to this thing, you're like, whoa, there's 6 sides and you can stop for a minute. It kind of set them apart. So I think that might have screwed them up a little bit negatively because Hogan's like, it's got to be square, brother. It's like, no, it doesn't need to be square. They've been doing this for how long before you got your friggin' overpaid tan rawhide foo here? Come on, man. That's one of the things that, I know for a fact didn't help TNA was we're going to do a square ring now that Hogan's here. And it was partially Hogan's input that made that happen. And it ruined the one of the things that set them apart.
Agree.
So this pay-per-view being locked down, all the matches are going to be inside the 6 sides of steel cage. And there's a lot of other stipulations throughout the matches that we'll cover as well. So let's get right into it with the pre-show match. You have 3 Live Crew, which is Conan and Ron Killings, or R-Truth, getting a win over David Young and Lex Lovett, and the Naturals, Andy Douglas and Chase Stevens with Chris Candido. So if you know those other names, good for you.
Well, and you got to remember the other member of 3 Live Crew was Road Dogg.
Dogg, yep.
So yeah, those are the 3. So I mean, you think Ron Killings is R-Truth for people that don't understand who that is. That's how long ago R-Truth's been still doing. I mean, he was K-Quick before that. So
Get rowdy.
Like, it's amazing to think of like some of the and Tim brought that up. Some of these names you're going to know and you're going to be like, holy crap, that was that long ago. So I mean, it was probably a decent match. I we didn't get to see it obviously, so I would imagine it was probably a decent match.
I mean, the Naturals showed up in WWE for a cup of coffee too, which is kind of the theme for a lot of the talent on this roster. A lot of them showed up in WWE and just Vince doesn't understand what made them famous or what got them over or why they were together. So I mean, K-Quick went to Impact, TNA, got himself over and came back R-Truth, and that was probably one of the best comedy wrestlers they've had in the past decade. Many, even the current roster, Drew McIntyre has gone to TNA, so many people. So it's kind of funny how it's almost like another farm system, but it's not a farm system.
Mm-hmm. So we open up the pay-per-view with a tag team match. You have Apollo, not Apollo Crews. And
Apollo! Oh, wrong guy. Sorry.
Not that one. He's teaming up with Sonny Siaki, and they're going to get a win over Chris Candido and Lance Hoyt, which you may know as Lance Archer now in AEW. Match went about 7 minutes. It was a decent match, although it's really noteworthy for unfortunate reason. Chris Candido got severely injured in this match, suffered a broken leg. And this is right before his death. The rumors are that he had some complications from surgery with this injury. Then I read his brother kind of refuted that, so it's kind of up in the air what actually happened. But this match probably did have a impact on his death, unfortunately.
No pun intended with the Impact reference
yes.
there. And it's funny too because during the match you don't actually see like what happened at the time. They show the replay later on in the show, and you're like, oh, like you just watch his leg. So it was. I mean, it wasn't quite as bad as Psycho Sid doing the big boot, but it was similar. It was he folded his leg up pretty good. Kind of got it stuck under him. Really, is what happened. But yeah, it's unfortunate. Another guy, a good mind for the business that was gone too soon, and you can't say it was from an overdose or from you misusing drugs or anything, steroids. It was just an unfortunate situation.
And props to Impact Plus. At the end of this pay-per-view, they have the 10-bell salute to him that they included from the following week's show because, as Tim said, he did pass away 4 days later. And I kind of had forgotten that his death was related to this because for some reason I knew he had passed away shortly after, but I didn't realize it was from complications. Like you said, when they showed the injury, you're like, oh man, on that replay, it's almost like an NFL injury where it's just the lineman rolls up on someone and their leg just gets destroyed. And it's just think that something so small for someone who's so in shape and so athletic just took him out. And he had talent. And I like this shtick, the no gimmick man. He didn't need a gimmick to get over. And on a happier, funnier note, it's weird to see Lance Archer with that tramp stamp that now he has awkwardly covered up. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Now he's got like his grave on his back, but he got that weird little like tramp stamp thing, and his hair. I didn't recognize him at first until I think you said in the group text, "Oh yeah, Lance Archer's on this show." I'm like, shit, no way. But yeah, he's been wrestling forever.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, right there between R-Truth and now Lance Hoyt, it's like, man, they had their hands all over some of these more famous, wrestlers that may not have had the long. I mean, R-Truth's had a pretty long run in WWE, but and Lance was there as Vance Archer before he left for Japan. So it's pretty cool just to see some of the names.
Next up is a Prince of Darkness match with a couple names that you guys know. You have Dustin Rhodes getting a win over Bobby Roode with A1 and Scott D'Amore. This was basically a hardcore 2 out of 3 falls match. Bobby Roode got the first pinfall really quickly. Then Dustin Rhodes evens it up, and then It's a blindfold match for the last fall, which I hate blindfold matches. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. So, I mean, it was just too gimmicky for me, this match, because you already have the cage, then you're adding 2 out of 3 falls, then you're adding a blindfold match. It's too much. And it's especially when you have guys of this caliber that could really put on a good match, and they don't need these stipulations.
You hit the nail right on the head. I don't understand why you need to have a gimmick inside of a gimmick just for sake of gimmicks. There was no title involved. There was no title shot involved. Other than, the whole US Canada thing, there was really no need for a 2 out of 3 falls match.
Mm-hmm.
It's Vince Russo. Like you guys said earlier, this is Vince Russo booking 101. If he could have put a pole somewhere in this cage, he would have. I'm surprised that, we're going to see the Canadian flag on a hockey stick later, which we clearly know is going to be him too. I'm surprised that wasn't sticking on top of the cage that they had to get for the third fall. That's one thing, and I think this is where Dustin Rhodes really started to go downhill. This is when his substance abuse issues really came to light, and he became his awful gimmick. I can't remember the name. It was like Rain or something that.
Black Rain.
Thank
Black
you.
Rain, yeah.
And this was kind of like the downfall of him. Bobby Roode's starting to kind of go, so it made sense to have these two go together because Bobby Roode was kind of on the rise, and Team Canada was a hot faction. They were great heels, and if you look at who they have, Petey Williams friggin' invented the Canadian Destroyer, which is now completely overused, and Scott D'Amore runs TNA, so it made sense. But like you said, the gimmick upon gimmick, it ruined a match that should have just been a veteran helping a young guy get established.
I will say I like the finish, even though it was hokey as shit. I like how they had the steel chair in there, and you hit the wrong guy, and then it was a creative finish, but it was still a hokey ass third fall. So but it was pretty neat. Other than that, yeah, it's unfortunate, and yeah, it's amazing to think. Like you said, again, another theme of this being 16 years ago, and these two guys are still wrestling.
Yeah. Next up is a 4-man escape match. You have Shocker going to pick up a win over Chris Sabin, Matt Bentley, who is going by Michael Shane here. And side fact, he's Shawn Michaels' cousin. And Sanjay Dutt is the other competitor.
And Shawn Michaels' cousin.
Are you sure that Sanjay Dutt's not related to Shawn Michaels?
Yeah, I don't think so.
But yeah, no, I was going to mention that too because I looked it up because I was like, man, I knew the name sounded familiar, and it's Matt Bentley for people that don't know, like you were saying. But yeah, when I saw him come out, I'm like, man, I know, I know this guy. I did the same thing. I Wikipedia'd him while I was watching it. So
I thought it was a decent match. I thought, it was really good. Again, it's a little gimmicky for me because it's an elimination match, but then when it gets to the final 2, you have to escape the cage. So again, it's a little too gimmicky, and a lot of these matches on the card were a little too gimmicky for me. But I thought this was probably up to this point the best match of the night. I enjoyed this one. It wasn't terrible.
I spent most of the first 5 minutes of the match trying to tell if Shocker was Alberto Del Rio. So full disclosure, I'm like looking at the screen closer. I'm squinting. I'm like, is that? Because from the side, it kind of looked like him. It just he had a little more hair and similar build. So
it's hard because you're used to seeing it behind bars. So
that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you figure he's in a cage. So, but yeah, newsflash, not him. Different guy. Different Mexican. And again, if you're Mexican, I apologize. That's kind of how I almost stereotyped 2 guys that looked alike. So I apologize for that. But it was just funny. I'm like I said, I'm like, that felt really, I knew the guy was young. So I'm like, it could have been, but no, not even close. But like Tim said, decent match, a little gimmicky. You almost think in an escape match like that, you'd want to be the first person to escape the cage, period. I don't know if that would have made the match any better. But they were playing that way too because they were breaking up pinfalls and stuff for no reason.
Yeah.
Like during the match. So I don't know if they got the rules quite right or, there was a cool spot when the girls got involved. That spot from Trinity off the top of the cage was crazy. She could have died. She almost over rotated, and luckily they caught her. She could have been bad. But definitely a different twist on a steel cage match. Put it that way.
I mean, you thought you were disappointed. When I first read the card, I thought it was going to be Shockmaster in the steel cage, not Shocker. So I was like, I was disappointed twice. But this is the reason when we were talking about earlier, people kind of shitting on TNA. This was kind of the stuff they did that kind of drove some casuals away and some of the fans away, was the over gimmick and then some of the blatant ripoffs. Like Trinity was just a Lita ripoff, down to the exposed thong, the moonsaults. Because I remember her when she started, so she used to always have the thong out, just like Lita. She would do the moonsault, and then she tried to break her neck like Lita did, so like that spot was brutal. And can we just also talk about those announcers? Like Don West and Mike and TNA do not get enough credit. Those announcers they help keep you in that match, even when something's kind of messed up. Like they're like, you will only see this on Impact, TNA Wrestling pay-per-views, which is right because I didn't order them. Right.
Well, and so the funny thing is that Mike TNA gets crapped on a lot by Bischoff on his podcast for not really being a play-by-play guy, which he really isn't, even though they use him as a play-by-play guy. I think Mike TNA, in a 3-man booth, Mike TNA is a perfect guy. Like he's like the Excalibur of a 3-man booth. Perfect. He knows the moves. He's, a student of the game as it comes to that side of it. But Don West, I think, is really underrated. That guy could do, he held so many hats at the beginning of TNA. He was out there hawking merchandise and just that guy is an unsung hero at the early years of TNA. And it's too bad they didn't let him stay on maybe he didn't want to stay on the desk, but he was actually a decent color guy. And you could tell he liked the product because he was very interested. His emotion wasn't faked. Put it that way. So
yeah, I enjoyed Don West's commentary. He's a pitchman, so he sells the product really well. They even sold the fact about the camera, like they cut out the hole in the cage for the camera. They made that as like this big invention. Like they even sold that to you.
Right. Or the helmets. They're all wearing helmets.
Yeah, they're all wearing helmets.
That made me chuckle too. Like I'm like, these motherfuckers are wearing helmets. Like so I'm like, we got to protect our cameraman. But like you said, he's a salesman. And I remember when I went to a TNA event back in 2008, you talked about hawking shirts. We're literally walking in. So for those who've never gone to the Impact Zone, it was an experience in itself. But you go into Universal Studios, you kind of walk past where the Blue Man Group is, and it's a sound stage. I'm pretty sure they used to film Guts there because it reminded me of how Guts looked back in the day where it had the risers. So you kind of walk in and you go into like a hangar.
Do you see any of the aggro crag? Was any of that left over?
No, unfortunately not.
No?
We're taking some of that home because my fat ass wouldn't have won it.
I wanted to cut you off only because I was curious if you saw that, but yeah, keep going. Sorry,
So you go in and then you kind of go in like almost like an airport hangar, like an air hangar, but like a tarmac where you kind of go up to get into the venue. And he's literally sitting at the table selling these like $10 I was there like TNA Impact shirts, and it's like, it's not the commentator. Like I was just so blown away that the commentator is trying to sell me a $20 t-shirt. Because if you go to a WWE event, people selling you t-shirts in the parking lot, those aren't legit t-shirts. Because I still have my WrestleMania t-shirt without the R in it from WrestleMania 24.
It's WrestleMania.
I think it was Mike Tyson who sold that.
You wouldn't say that if he was standing next to you.
No, I'd be getting away. I'd be getting punch hard. That's Shawn Michaels. Or Dax.
Next up, we have Jeff Hardy and Raven in the 6-side steel match. Jeff Hardy gets the win here after putting Raven. It's basically a tables match. It is a tables match. Jeff Hardy puts Raven through about 100 tables, it seemed like, with a leg drop off the top. I thought this was a real entertaining match. It was hardcore. There was color in here, which I will give TNA credit. They have these gimmick matches with the cages and everything, and there was color involved. I know that's kind of a issue we've had with WWE when they have these cage matches and there's no color. I will give TNA credit for that. But yeah, I thought this was a pretty entertaining, hardcore match.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch the referee help Raven stack those tables.
Yes.
During the match. I'm watching it, and even the 10A, I think, mentioned it at one point. You see the referee there, because he knows what's going on. He knows that's the only way to end the match, so he figures he might as well help him set tables. So, but you can always tell when somebody goes for a big move like that. Whoever's setting the tables up is the poor guy going through it. Like 9 times out of 10, it always backfires and it's the other guy. It was a cool spot. Hardy pretty much pancaked Raven though. I mean, he landed square on him. There was no landing on the table per se until he rolled off a Raven and then landed on the table. But yeah, definitely nice to see color, and it was a good gimmick match inside of a gimmick. It wasn't the 2 out of 3 falls match. It was a decent gimmick match inside of a gimmick match.
I know we probably say this a lot in our shows, and I apologize, but this is when the cards started to pick up for me. Like, this is when I think the show really started to show, I think, what TNA could put on, because like you said, yeah, there was over gimmick heavy. Like, every match had a gimmick inside of gimmick, essentially, but this one was done well. And you have Raven, the ECW original, who we've covered on the show, who really wasn't used that well in WB, kind of got a second, breath of life here. And then Jeff Hardy, who has had his issues, but they put on a hell of a match. And like you said, when the refs helped the step spots, I'm like, oh, Raven's going through. And, I tried not to look to see who won first, because I wanted to kind of be surprised, because, again, I hadn't seen this before. But like you said, I saw him stacking tables. I'm like, oh, yeah, Raven's going through, because it's pretty obvious when someone's stacking a table, they're the poor bastard going through, like you said. And when he just hits him, you can tell that he just drives every ounce of his 140-pound frame through Raven, and Raven just takes that and just absorbs it, and you cringe. And I personally, I don't know too many people who'd want to take a swanton bomb from here or a leg drop, but I feel like every time he does move, he just throws that himself at them. Like, fuck the table, I'm putting you through it.
Well, and then it's funny too, because every now and again you'll see him do a swanton where he doesn't get over. He hits the guy and falls on his own back, and it's like, oh, like you just killed his ribs, man. You didn't hit the movie anywhere close to how it was supposed to be. So yeah, I mean, that's one thing I will say. I'll give Kevin Owens credit. Whenever he does it, he nails that son of a bitch, and he hits it exactly how he should. Shoulders on the guy, he lands on the mat, so he's not hurting anybody. Even when he did it off the forklift on Roman Reigns, he actually, again, performed it perfectly. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it's because Owens is that much better of a high flyer than Jeff Hardy, which sounds screwed up, but his placement is always spot on, and Jeff Hardy's a little bit at times.
Well, it's kind of like Darby when he does the coffin drop. Like, he tries not to hit the mat at all. He tries to just hit you with every inch of his. I just think that's a style they like. They're like, I'm gonna work you stiff. I'm gonna potato your ass every way I can.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's it too, but it's sometimes comical to watch some of these poor bastards take a swanton from Hardy and literally or even the leg drop off the, almost dropped my water there, guys. Anyways, or a leg drop, off the cage or whatever. And you just literally, like you said, it's like, you just hear Raven going because he got smashed. So, but maybe that's it. Maybe you're onto something where it's, he more would rather just land on you than him take the force of it, which is kind of shitty in a way. If you think about it. That's like what were we watching? They were talking about Kevin Nash giving out the jackhammers, and there was somebody a while back that was like, after they took one, they're like, he's never doing that to me again. He's like, I'm never taking that move again, because he doesn't, sometimes when he throws you down, he does it so quick he doesn't tuck you and you feel like you're gonna land on your head. I can't remember who it was, but I remember hearing about it on, maybe it was Bruce's podcast. It might have been one of the stupid remixes that Bruce has every week now. But yeah, I remember that's the first thing I think of is people that are like, "Ooh, I'm never taking that move again because of this." There had to be people that were like, "I'm not taking your swanton again, bro. I'm good. You can twist a fate me and cover me if you want."
Right.
Next up is a tag team match. You have America's Most Wanted, which is Chris Harris and James Storm. They're going to get a win over Team Canada, which was represented by Eric Young and Petey Williams here. Again, we're in the cage. I mean, I thought the match was all right. I'm tired of the USA versus Canada storyline. It's been way overdone. WWE did it. WCW did it. Now TNA is doing it. So I couldn't really get invested in the storyline. But I thought the match was pretty good. I mean, they isolated Chris Harris from even getting into the cage for half the match. He finally gets in there and they get the win. I thought it was a decent match, but yeah, I couldn't really get behind the story here.
So, mind you, again, this is another somewhat of a like you said, the Canadian USA theory, or against each other kind of set up. But it also told a good story where it was America's Most Wanted. So it had the match itself, the titles meant something. So it didn't need to have all these gimmicky things. So it saved the match, because if there had been like first one to blow a bubble and stick it on their forehead, it would have been it had what it needed. And they did a really good job of using, the cheap heat with A1, trying to keep Wildcat Chris Harris out of the cage. And props to James Storm. He just had his, like, what was it, 1,000th match or something with TNA, and they brought back Chris Harris for that, which was pretty cool. So it just shows you that if you do it right, it can be done. But like Tim says, you have Canada, US so much that but this was also 16 years ago, so it wasn't as bad. But yeah, it seems like you always have foreign against US, no matter whether it's, the League of Nations a while back with, all those guys from different countries, or the Hart Foundation or whatever. The storytelling was good. The match was pretty good. I do like how they kind of singled out James Storm. I think these four guys are really underrated. James Storm had a cup of coffee in WWE. Well, NXT, Eric Young, same thing. Petey Williams, I don't know how, Vince didn't see anything or try to get him from, Petey Williams, he might be one of the better jacked up little guys. He's kind of like a Neville, a Pac almost, a Pac, where, he is jacked to the gills, and he's not a big guy, but he does a lot of, cool things. So it was a good match.
Yeah, I'm a huge AMW mark. I've always loved Chris Harris and James Storm. I hated when they broke them up, and then James Storm and Bobby Roode became Beer Money. Like, I wasn't really a big fan of them splitting up. But another one who had a cup of coffee, Chris Harris, was in NXT as Braden Walker. Anyone remember that terrible gimmick? I'm gonna smash your fucking face in. So I think too is, for everything other companies had on this card had a lot of people WWE missed on. James Storm is uber talented. Chris Harris was uber talented. Didn't look such good shape when he showed back up at Impact this past week, but he was great. Petey Williams, like you said, I don't know. I agree with you. That's a great comparison. He was totally Neville Pac type, where he just could do crazy things you wouldn't think someone at his size. And then, like you said, he was so jacked. You're like, how? And like I said, he invented the Canadian Destroyer. That used to be the move that you would pop for, when you would hit that Canadian Destroyer. And now everyone, including Bad Bunny, does it, but it's a different story. And then
but
Eric
when
Young
Bad Bunny does it, you don't expect it. That's the difference.
Right. That's true. And then this is Eric Young kind of teetering between this gimmick and then Super Eric for a little while, because again, they had to parody WWE when they were doing their superhero training. They had Super Eric, and man, I don't know what he did when he grew a beard and went to the gym or something, but Eric Young just completely 180. And right now he's wrestling on a torn ACL. So that dude's got some balls. I just want to point that out. And this match was phenomenal. And like Tim said, the whole shtick of Canada and USA, it gets old, because that's all wrestling promoters like to do, is cheap heat. We're going to make someone against the USA, because, it's easy to cheer against someone who's fighting the USA. It is, but we don't need to see it every single year. We don't need to see an anti-USA faction. We don't need to see a Sheik, a Muhammad Hassan, a USA versus Canada, USA versus, Puerto Rico, not Puerto Rico, excuse me, Mexico, and the Mexicools. Like, we don't need to see that kind of thing. We need to see good storylines that make sense. They could have had any other storyline, but like you said, they had to go with USA versus Canada for the cheap heat. But that's why they were such a good faction, because they used it, unfortunately. They used the cheap heat and got over.
Vince Russo's like, bro, what if we have Canada over here, and then we have them face United States? Yeah. Jeff Jarrett was too busy wrestling at the time, so he's just like, yeah, it's fine. Go ahead. Just whatever. Sounds good.
Next up is a match for the X Division Championship. You have Christopher Daniels. He's going to retain the title over Elix Skipper in about 15 and a half minutes. Up to this point, this was my match of the night. I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a phenomenal match. And I think what it was, too, compared to the other ones, it wasn't gimmicky. Yeah, you had the cage, but that was it. There was nothing else involved. There was no blindfolds. There was no tables, nothing. It was a solid match. I really enjoyed this one. Both of these guys, I was really impressed with Elix Skipper's work here. I really enjoyed it, and I read on his Wikipedia page now that he's a manager at Applebee's. I don't know if that's true or not. So, but anyways, speaking of which, it's half off apps right now.
Yeah. Full disclosure: we are recording Friday night, not Saturday morning like we normally do. So this is Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present After Dark.
Yes. But overall, I thought this was a really, really, really great match.
Yeah, no, Christopher Daniels is one of my all-time favorites. Characters, wrestlers. I think he's very underrated for what he's brought to this business. At one point, he was rumored to be the higher power in the Ministry of Darkness, but Vince is like, well, he's too short. Damn it, he's too short. He can't. No. So, I wonder if Vince ever kicks himself when he sees some of these guys he's passed on having fantastic success other way, because he never had to go to WWE to get his success, and now he's at AEW passing it on to the younger generation. So I think he's just an all-around great guy. So it's cool to see. And he was with the X division and stuff. He was one of the pioneers of some of the craziest stuff they did, back in the day, some of the Ultimate X matches and stuff like that. He was involved in some of those, and they tore the house down. They used their X division as almost like a cruiserweight division, even though it wasn't like WCW used to when they had their cruiserweights. They're putting out banger matches every single Monday night on Nitro.
That's it right there. Their X division is what made TNA. It's what made you tune in. Even the X division match where they had those like 4 wires going across to form the X, where they had to get that stupid cheap plastic red X.
That's the Ultimate X match.
Yeah. That's what I was going for. But
I said that in my comments, so I just wanted to make sure that you were listening to what I said.
No, I was. Always a rib with you.
Yeah, seriously, we can't crap on each other. How are we?
Right.
How are you?
Right. No, I know. You got to give shit to take shit, right? But no, one of the things I was going to say is I remember is not only Christopher Daniels doing crazy moves off that, but even Elix Skipper, like you said, him doing that move off the cage, like some of the spots they did to each other was phenomenal. And when he was with Triple X, when he was with Low Key and Christopher Daniels, like they put on some amazing shows together too. And it's a shame that unfortunately his son, Elix Skipper's son, was murdered, and that's what caused him to essentially retire. And I think it's probably why he's at Applebee's, like you said, Tim, because I think he took a step back from wrestling because I think he just didn't think it was important, which it's a shame because he had a talent. And I really think that he retired in his prime, and I think he probably would still be going today if life didn't treat him so shittily. But this match was a great match, and I agree with you. This was probably my match of the night until the main event, and probably one of the greatest matches that Lockdown's had, because these two could just go. And it shows you why Christopher Daniels is in AEW now as one of the talent relations people, because he just has such a mind for the business.
Yep. And then again, we mentioned a little bit last week on our show at the end that the Impact Plus network, the app, is literally $72 for a year. If you are a wrestling fan, get the app. It's a little bit clunky. It's not as bad as Peacock, but it's close. It's totally worth it for some of the things that you can watch. If you didn't see a lot of this stuff from like we said, 2000 to 2011, some of their matches and some of the stuff they do in some of these Ultimate X matches and stuff are, I'm just going to say it, they're fucking insane. Some of the stuff they were doing back then, you would look at today and be like, wow, like it's just good stuff. And I feel like, again, the LOL TNA stigma that it has is not fair. Obviously there's certain points where the company had mistakes and whatever, but matches like this show you why and what the company was built on.
I think those same people are the ones who go, oh, AEW in the mud, because I think they can't expand their mind beyond WB. And I have no problem with competition, because competition, regardless of when it was, creates a better product for us fans. If we have more than one alternative, like we have Peacock to watch wrestling, we have Impact to watch wrestling, we have Bleacher Report Live to watch AEW. We have so many sources to watch wrestling. We have wrestling 5 days a week now. It's amazing. Like we should be happy as fans celebrating, not like, oh, LOL TNA, like you said, like the fans were, because I remember watching it until they went head to head with Raw, tried to go Monday night. They were making smart decisions, booking decisions, not so much, but this match, like you said, the the Impact Plus app's totally worth it. I'm glad I get to check out some of these things that I didn't get to see back then because I wasn't going to pay for the pay-per-views, but it's great watching it. Like, holy crap, they really did put on a show, and get your blinders off and give it a shot because you won't be disappointed. You're going to find at least one match you're going to be blown away by.
Absolutely. Next up, though, is the Lethal Lockdown match, and I'm going to try to explain the rules. Dusty Rhodes earlier in the night picks there's two teams. You have Team Nash and Team Jarrett, and Dusty Rhodes is going to pick an individual from each team to start the match, and then there's a lottery, and then after 5 minutes, then another person comes down, and then after 2 minutes, then another person comes down, and so on. So Team Nash is represented by Diamond Dallas Page, Sean Waltman, and BG James, who is Road Dogg. Team Jarrett is represented by Jeff Jarrett, Monty Brown, and the Outlaw, who's Billy Gunn. Team Nash is going to get the win after Sean Waltman does the Hurricane Rana, which it almost seemed like they botched the ending on this one. It was kind of a weird ending. This match was just really confusing to me. I kept asking myself, like, who's on which team? Like, the rules didn't make any sense. Like, I was looking forward to this one on paper because most of these guys on here, with the exception of maybe Monty Brown, if you're not, a hardcore fan. But other than that, I mean, it was just really hard to keep up with. Roland, you're on mute, buddy.
Oh, thanks. I do that once a show, so it's my stick now. That's what I do. The definition of a clusterfuck is what this match was. There's no other way to describe it. It was just, Kevin Nash wasn't in the match because he had a staph infection or whatever not, and Road Dogg, BG James took his spot, and like you said, confusing, hard to follow. Any things that are similar sounding to that you can throw in there, and it would describe this match. And it's unfortunate, like you said, because there's a lot of big names in this match. But yeah, it was just very cluster effy, to say the least.
I'm glad you guys said that because, I finished watching this, this morning, and I had 2 matches left, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to pick this one up. And did I miss something? Okay, what's going on? Like, is this a battle royal? Like, I was genuinely confused the whole time. Like you said, who's on whose side? Who's on first? What's on second? Like, I'm so confused right now. And I mean, there was some cool moments, like DDP took a beating, and BG James staring off with the Outlaw, teasing their rivalry. But basically, it's like you had DX and the Click kind of fighting each other, and then they had to show that gross ass thing on Kevin's leg like 3 or 4 times in the show. Like, I get he had a staph infection. I don't need to see it. I believe you. I don't care if it's a storyline. And then Monty Brown just coming. It was just. I feel like this was not needed. This is something that maybe they do on the Go Home show to set up Lockdown. Like, they just have this brawl, but it just felt like it was a post-match brawl. It didn't feel like a match at all. And the only thing I really remember Monty Brown for is he did that stupid shoulder tackle that they tried to sell like it was the most devastating move.
Yeah, the pounce.
And they had
the pounce. Yeah.
And they had to always mention he's a former New England Patriot. Yeah, you were on the practice squad, bro. You're not a full-fledged Patriot. Like,
bro, he's a Patriot. We should put him in the Canadians match, bro. But yeah, it's he had a cup of coffee in TNA. Really, he's just a name. I do remember, I watched it somewhat regularly back then when it was on TNT, or no, it was on
Spike TV for a while too.
TNN, yeah, it was on TNN, but it became Spike. Yeah, so I mean, I do remember watching it, and so I knew some of these, lesser names, using air quotes, but the fans loved him though. Honestly, I mean, if you look at the response he got at the Impact Zone, that's not really saying much because a lot of those fans didn't have to pay to go. So, but it was just like we've covered. It was just a cluster, and it was so hard to follow. Even Tenay and Don West couldn't even put any of their magic on it. It was just a cluster.
And also, like you said, they're not painting at the Impact Zone. It's also early May, early April, end of April in Florida in Universal with no air conditioning in sight. Some of the people in there are just amped to be cold, and there's a beer tent right outside, so they're already jacked up too, or as Tom Brady would say, get lubed up before they go in there. So they'd probably cheer for Mickey Mouse coming out and getting a stunner at this point. But
oh boy. we're recording so late. It's just delirious. At
Yeah,
this
I know,
point.
right?
Pure delirium. But yeah.
Next up is our main event. The winner here is going to get a shot at the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, which is held by Jeff Jarrett at Hard Justice. You have AJ Styles and Abyss here. A match went 18 minutes long with AJ Styles getting the win. Again, I thought this was a phenomenal match. What a way to end the night. You have arguably the two biggest stars in TNA at the time closing out your show. And again, there was, yes, you had the cage, but there was no other gimmicks aside from it. It was a wrestling match. And there was color involved, which I thought added to the match. And I really enjoyed this one. And props to both competitors here.
Yeah, you imagine if the cluster before this was to go home, like for the fans to go home happy, they'd be like, what the fuck did we just watch? Like, I don't even know what that was. So I'm glad that the match after that was totally worth it. Cause you know, I'm an AJ Styles mark. I've been one for a long time. I remember when he had short hair. I met him when he had short hair. So it was cool to see. And like you said, Abyss, Eric Bischoff kind of makes him like a Mankind ripoff character in his mind. And it's like, I get it, but he's, I mean, just because of the mask maybe, but he's nowhere near what Mankind was. He's bigger, he's, you know, whatever. But I think he kind of gets, you know, crapped on a little bit for the gimmick sometimes by certain people. But definitely the best way to end the show. I mean, the only other way you could end the show is if you had the Christopher Daniels Elix Skipper match at the end. I don't see any other way that, you know, so props to them for whoever put this show in order, because it's a good thing they didn't end on that stupid cluster that was before this.
Mm-hmm.
No, I agree, because this match delivered. Like, good thing this match didn't go first too, because who the fuck would follow this match? Like, some of the spots, like the sunset flip spot or that nasty German suplex that AJ did, like, they just destroyed the hell out of each other. They definitely had chemistry, so you can tell they definitely worked well together. And I hate when people call him a Mankind ripoff because of the mask too, because he was hardcore and he was like a Mankind, but he did it his own way, because he also did it with a lot more wrestling than Mankind did. Like his, you know, black hole slam that he did looks brutal. When he hits you with that, you looks like you're done. Like, I don't know, it's just the way he just lowers you down. It's so impactful. And then the spots that he does with attacks and his facial expressions, his mannerisms, like, he sells the hell out of everything. And then AJ already being a great seller and a great worker elevated Abyss. And if you're gonna watch, you know, one or two matches, Christopher Daniels match, this match, and you'll go home happy, because that's what elevates the card of these two matches. And this match certainly left me on a good note with this pay-per-view.
Yeah, and you also, I mean, the Styles clash into the tax.
Oof.
Like the fact that, you know, he was able to even, I mean, he didn't get his arms hooked, but he was still able to get Abyss up and then, you know, go. So, I mean, just some of the stuff they did was good. And to be fair, before AJ and Omos were together, they teased a little bit of a reunion between Abyss and AJ on Raw for a little while with his gimmick attorney there, his whoever that was there, the Joseph Parks character as his attorney, or as his whatever he was. I can't even remember what he was, but it was cool to see them together on TV again and look back on this from 16 years ago and go, oh, that's awesome. So Abyss might be one of the only guys that never that works for WWE that never actually wrestled for WWE that fans can recognize. Nobody knows who Pat Buck is. Nobody knows who Adam Pearce is before this. And by saying nobody, if somebody listened to this and they knew who Adam Pearce was, I apologize. But the mass of people are not going to know either one of those guys, but you'll know Abyss. Like, you show up, you go, oh yeah, that was that crazy dude that did some stuff in Impact that we still talk about to this day. So, you know, I think the character and the person, you know, this has turned into an I Love Abyss thing. I think he's very, very underrated, and it's hard for me to even think of people crapping on him for some of the stuff. I mean, think of some of the stuff he's done for the business. You know, some of the matches he's been in, just crazy stuff.
Monsters Ball matches. If you ever get a chance to watch a Monsters Ball match with him in it, you're probably gonna throw up a few times because of how brutal they are, or some of the spots he has with Decay later on. Towards the tail end of his run in TNA Impact. It's a shame he never got to wrestle WWE because I always wanted to see him fight Undertaker. I always wanted to see him fight a Bray Wyatt. I wanted to see him fight another spooky. I feel like he could have had a few good matches. I don't know if it was personal reasons, injuries, what it was, why he went backstage. I'm glad they at least have him for his wrestling knowledge because he is a smart man because he kept kayfabe too. He wouldn't go anywhere. He didn't show his face for the longest time. He would kind of come out in like a little towel. He'd wear like cheap Halloween masks when you walk around Universal Studios. And it wasn't until he unmasked on camera that people really even knew what he looked like. So he kept kayfabe alive. He knows the business, and I'll mark out for Abyss. I love Abyss. I don't care. I'll add to the love fest.
And it turns out he's a funny bastard too. Like some of the stuff he did, when he was looking for his brother. When he when he was like just some of the stuff he did and said, if you remember some of that, and then the stuff he did with AJ, it's just his facials and stuff, the stuff he does when he just looks like he's a kid caught with his hand in a candy drawer. He just looks like the facial expressions he looks, it's really cool that WWE at least recognizes him for that, and it's too bad he wasn't able to have a little bit of a run in WWE.
So that's our rundown of Lockdown 2005. I'm going to give it probably a 6.5 if I had to rate it, just because there was a lot of matches that were way too gimmicky, and then you had that cluster of the Lethal Lockdown match. But overall, the Christopher Daniels, Elix Skipper, and the main event really saved it for me. And those were the two that I would recommend if you are going to go back and watch anything from this pay-per-view.
Yeah, I agree. I've also noticed I feel like Mongo and I are the only ones that swear on this show, so I apologize to both of us. Tim, I don't know because Tim had the chance to say clusterfuck and he didn't. He was like that cluster, and so that was funny. But somewhere in the 6 range. Definitely not the worst thing I've ever seen, but could have been a little bit better. But it also was still, it showed you that they had potential and they weren't quite where they got to yet. Because some of the stuff after this got really good. They had a window where they had some bangers between like 05, 06 to 2011. So I would definitely love to cover them more. Hopefully some of the fans enjoy it and, give us some input. And I'm not saying I want to do them every week, obviously, but, it'd be nice to do some different Slammiversaries and, stuff like that to give some of these lesser guys that people may not know a little bit of a rub. Give them that push.
No, I agree. It's a big part of my wrestling past. I loved watching, like you said, watching the old, Impact on Spike TV, TNN, and the only problem is, when they lost their cable deal, that's what I think happened to me is I stopped watching when it changed networks every few years. So it's like, okay, I don't even know where they are anymore. So like it just. That's kind of why I gave up, but I'm glad with the Impact Plus app. But we can relive some of these pay-per-views, relive it because these are lesser known. Again, we've seen some crappy things. We've covered WCW 2000s, which is some of the worst era in wrestling. But the 2004 to like 2012ish, like we said, is solid for this promotion. And like everyone said, get the Impact Plus app, $72 a year, and you're gonna watch some gems. And I'd give this a 6.5 too. And Tim, I'm glad to hear you swear because I feel bad too because I'm like, wow, I dropped a lot of F-bombs in the show. It's been a long day for me too, so I apologize, but that's real here because it's still real to me, damn it.
That's right.
Well, and that's the other thing too. Like, I think the more when we have the banter back and forth and stuff, we start talking like we're not recording sometimes, and we don't. So like we are a little more animated and maybe a little less PG, when we're not recording. So if you hear a few more swears, you should be mostly our age anyway, so you should be used to it. But we do our best to not swear every other word. So again, this is the late night. It's already 11 o'clock on a Friday, so 11 p.m. So some of us are a little more awake than others. So. Tim and I both had stuff going on tomorrow, but and that's the thing. I will crap on Pritchard one more time and just say that's the thing. No matter how busy we are, we find time for you guys to get you a show every week. And I know we're not at that level where we're not working for WWE, so Pritchard does have a valid reason. However, it's unfortunate that every other show is a remix. Like the last 2 shows have been remix shows. So it's, we're going to try not to do that to you guys.
We're also not afraid to cover TNA, Bruce.
Ooh,
that's right.
Ooh. And we'll cover modern day WWE as well, Bruce.
Yes.
Don't worry,
It's
he's not
cease and
scared. He
desist.
doesn't. He doesn't.
I'm scared.
He's not going to hear it. He doesn't know. But I mean, worst case scenario, maybe he can send us one of those garbage bags. I mean, they must have some around. I mean, Carano's been sending them out left and right. So that douchebag. I find it. I want to cover that just for a second. I can't get over, like, it's not enough to release somebody. And if you guys haven't heard this story, just go look at Mickie James' Twitter account. She pretty much tweeted right at Vince and was like, "Listen, I got my stuff sent to me after you guys terminated me in a fucking garbage bag." So apparently, from what we've heard, it's coming out that he seems to do that a lot. There's been a lot of people
with the females.
Yeah, a lot of people. Oh, well, and Darren Young said that Carano was also, a bit of a douchebag to him. So you know what? Carano seems to be slimy, and it's good that he's not there anymore. And there's no reason to treat people like that. Even, it's literally you've already fired these people, and now you're sending them a trash bag. You're pretty much telling them they now not have a job, and you think they're trash, is what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So it's horrible. It's such a bad look. I'm glad they took the bull by the horns and shit canned him. So I just had to get that in there because that's so topical right now that you can't treat people like that. We're all human beings. There's enough crap going on in the world, and I'm not going to get into it, but just to somebody to lose their job to then be like, here's a trash bag full of your junk. It's like, come on, dude, just put it in a box, make it presentable. Like, how long does it take you to put stuff in a box? Instead, he puts them in a trash bag, throws that in a box, and she's like, I'm surprised he didn't ship the trash bag.
To a Hall of Famer too. Mickie James is a Hall of Famer. And the fact that this dumbass company can't figure out how to use her in the women's division as a coach or as a mentor or as anything else is another story too. But then to treat a Hall of Famer who has given her body and mind and soul and passion to you and say, like you said, here's a trash bag full of your shit. And don't worry, I paid the extra so you got your trash bag before it destroyed open in the FedEx box. And hearing that he did to Darren Young and other females, I'm glad he got fired too, because Emily watches Total Divas, and I've caught a few episodes with her, and I know reality TV is a whole nother thing, but the times they had him on, he just seemed like a douchebag. I know you said earlier off air that you wanted to call him a douchebag, so I'll call him for you. He seems and looks like a total douchebag, and all these actions kind of validate that point. Yeah, and
it's unfortunate, and like you said, I don't. They had Mickie James have a tryout for commentary at one point too, on the dark shows for both the Stand and Deliver shows, and apparently that didn't work out because she doesn't have a job. But like, how do you drop the ball on someone that brings that much knowledge and that much wrestling history and can still go? I just and yet you have people. I mean, you have people on show like Nia Jax hurting everybody, and it's and no offense to Nia, but like that's the first thing that comes to mind. Like she's out there getting TV time, and you have people like Mickie James you can't find 5 minutes for. And Nia Jax sometimes on Raw is on the show 3 times between a segment in the back, or she comes out with Shayna, or you just can't find a spot. Come on, you guys.
And they should stop hoarding talent then. That's the problem. Don't hoard talent just to fire them a year later, because any other company in the world, if my company or Tim's company or your company started hiring everybody in the local community so we weren't working with competitors, and then just said, go sit at home, we'll pay you. Okay, well, we're going to be bored. And then you're going to fire us and say, you can't work somewhere for 3 months. Like, okay, cool. So what was the point of hiring me then? What was the point of making me waste my time? I know we could do a whole episode of this, but still, it's just, it's annoying. I'm glad that, with Triple H and Stephanie, it seems like they have a better head on their shoulders. And I'm glad that they did the right thing, because they seem like actual people who are like, no, we don't want this culture here. We don't want this crap here. See you later. They did the right thing. And I'm proud that I'm a huge Triple H fan, because I'm glad he tweeted him out, basically publicly embarrassed him. It's like, yeah, this piece of shit's gone.
Yeah.
And that's what needed to be done, in all honesty. So I know we're kind of going a little bit long here, and it's a little bit off topic, but I felt like it was something that needed to be said. So
absolutely. I do want to mention a couple of things too, in regards to our show. We have a couple of exciting things in the pipeline for you guys, with our social media presence and online presence. Well, I don't know if we want to, splurge too much, but you want to let them know?
I think we can go ahead and at least let people know. It may not be quite where it needs to be yet, but we can at least spill the beans and give them a little bit of a spoiler. We'll be a Paul Heyman spoiler here.
So one of the things is we have created a YouTube account where you can find not yet, a lot of our episodes are on there already, up to episode 40 to episode 70. Well, this will be 73. We're working on getting the rest of the episodes up there. It just takes a little bit of time. So working on a YouTube channel, so just search Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present. It'll come right up for you guys. And Mongo here has been really working on a website for us, which is a great idea and an awesome way when that goes live for you guys to listen to our show as well.
Well, and not just, not just listen, but to know A, what's going on, and B, where to find everything. Like that's the thing that Mongo has the handle on here, is that he wants you to be able to go to the website and know you can link from this place, this wherever, to listen to us. And it doesn't have to be on Spotify. It doesn't have to be on Podbean. It doesn't have to be on YouTube. And the exciting thing about YouTube, the main reason why I personally think that we decided to kind of go on YouTube, not just for the exposure, but it gives us that video aspect if we decide to do something down the road that we can use the video for.
No, I agree. I'm excited to see some of these changes that we all have in store for you. And, I think too, just with all the avenues out there, I wanted to make sure we have a consolidated place that, so you can give us some feedback. Because that's one of the big things I want to do is we want to get feedback from you guys. We want to make sure, okay, hey, this sucks. Don't talk about this ever again. Or, hey, we really like this. Or if you just generally want to say that, kick Mongo off the show because he sucks. We just want to hear whatever you want to say. And we just want to be able to interact with you guys more, because I can see, and Tim can see, and Ron can see that we're growing, and we appreciate everyone who's listening. Also appreciate you listening every week, Linda. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Linda.
Very, very, very dedicated, my mother is. And again, like I've said before, she has no idea what she's listening to. She just listens to it to hear from her baby boy. Mrs. Bulis's baby boy on the podcast. So, but and then the other thing that's really cool, honestly, is that, yes, we are growing, but we never want to feel like, and that we've discussed this off air, and I'm going to throw it on air just so people can get where we're at. We never want this to feel like it's a job. We want us to come on here, shoot the shit like we usually do, give each other crap like we normally do, have a fun time, and afterwards be able to say, hey, that was a hell of a show. Let's do it again next week. We never want to be like, ugh, podcast. So, we're trying to get, different ways to stay that, to stay inventive, to keep it fun. And I think we're definitely going in the right direction. So
yeah, absolutely.
Just by making some of our episodes a smidge longer too. I mean, we've been going a little bit longer, so we hope you guys don't mind. If you do, let us know. We'll try to shorten them up. I mean, we'll do what we can to try to get you guys happy. We can't make everybody happy, but if you have an issue where you think we're rambling too much, tell us, and we'll do our best to not ramble as much. Or if we don't like you, we'll ramble more. I mean, that's just the way it's going to go. But we want that interaction. Is exactly what I would say.
So coming up for you guys next week, we're going to go back to 2006 and cover Backlash. It's the wrestling debut of God. It's Shawn Michaels and God versus Shane McMahon and Vince McMahon. I'm hoping Peacock did not censor any of that out, but it is on Peacock, so
yeah, we'll see.
So hopefully we'll be able to watch that in its entirety, and that's what we're going to break down for you guys next week.
Yeah, it's tough with Peacock. I mean, they have some stuff up there, and we don't know how much they've changed yet. So this will be the first one we've watched archived on Peacock. So we'll see how it goes.
We might need God for this one, so.
So Backlash 2006, that's coming up for you guys next week at 5. Until then, I'm Tim Kurt.
I'm Roland Pulis.
Now I'm Mongo.
And this is Wrestling with Wrestling Past and Present. Bye.
I hope you're all having a nice day.